Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
It's great to be back.
Today, we're going to be diving into some chalky waters, the world of international trade, and we're going to be unpacking some recent moves by former President Trump.
Some controversial moves, for sure.
Yeah, and specifically his decision to slap some tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China.
Always a hot topic.
Yeah, and you've given us a ton of material to work with. News articles, government reports, even some pretty heated opinion pieces. It seems like you want to go deeper than just the headlines here.
Oh, absolutely. We really want to understand the motivation, the why behind these tariffs. Like, what's the game plan here? Who stands to win, who stands to lose, and what does this mean for the global economy as a whole? It's a big puzzle.
Yeah, so, I think a lot of our listeners probably hear the word tariff, and their eyes kind of glaze over.
Yeah.
So, maybe let's just start with the basics. Like, what actually is a tariff? For those of us who don't spend all day reading trade agreements.
Yeah, no, it's actually simpler than it sounds. A tariff is just a tax on imported goods.
Okay.
It's basically like a border toll. So you're trying to make those foreign products more expensive so people are more likely to buy the stuff made at home.
So it's kind of like a Buy American campaign, but through taxes.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Okay, so in this case, Trump's imposing these tariffs on things like steel, aluminum, even solar panels. Is this basically him trying to just bolster, American-made products?
That's the stated goal. But like most things in international trade, it's not always that simple.
Right.
These are all industries that he's tried to protect before during his first term. And, there's also, you got to think about the political angle too, right?
Well, yeah, I was going to say the timing of all this seems pretty deliberate.
Yeah.
We were talking about a potential presidential run on the horizon.
Right. And these tariffs, they definitely play well with his base, especially in those manufacturing states. It's a way to appeal to those voters who feel like they've been left behind by globalization.
Okay, so maybe a savvy political move domestically, but what about the impact on our neighbors, Canada and Mexico? Their economies are pretty closely tied to ours, right?
Absolutely. I mean, they're major trading partners. And they're not exactly thrilled about these tariffs.
Yeah, and rightfully so.
Yeah. In fact, the Canadian finance minister actually called them protectionist policies.
Okay, so protectionist policies, what does that actually mean, in this context?
So basically, protectionism in this case means government policies that are designed to restrict international trade. It's all about shielding domestic industries from competition abroad. It's kind of like you're building a wall around your economy.
So basically trying to give American businesses a leg up, even if it means, stepping on the toes of our trading partners.
Yeah, you could see it that way. But the thing is, protectionism often leads to retaliation. So like Canada and Mexico, they might just slap their own tariffs on U.S. goods.
Right.
And that could just escalate tensions and hurt everyone involved.
Okay, so we're talking about potential trade wars. And then, of course, there's the USMCA. Isn't that basically like the new and improved NAFTA?
Yeah.
What happens to that agreement if we're all just slapping tariffs on each other?
Right. So the USMCA is the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. And it basically replaced NAFTA a few years ago. It's a pretty complex agreement, but it basically governs trade between the three countries. And yeah, these tariffs definitely put a strain on that agreement. It kind of undermines that whole spirit of cooperation and free trade that it's supposed to be about.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty shaky foundation to be building on.
Exactly.
And then, of course, we can't forget about China. We've had trade tensions with them for years now. And these new tariffs just feel like they're escalating that conflict even further.
Right. And China's such a huge player in the global economy. They're a major part of the supply chain, especially for things like electronics. So these tariffs on top of the ones that are already in place, they could really disrupt those supply chains.
So we're talking about potential shortages and higher prices, not just for Americans, but globally.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where a lot of economists start to get really concerned because they argue that these tariffs, even though they're supposed to help certain American industries, they could end up actually hurting consumers. And that could even slow down economic growth, both in the U.S. and around the world.
Okay, so it's not as simple as, protect American jobs, everything will be fine.
Nope, not all.
Okay, so let's play devil's advocate for a second. Are there any potential upsides to these tariffs? Like, is anybody actually going to benefit from all this?
Well, in the short term, some domestic industries that are, directly competing with those imports, they might see some gains, like, for example, American steel manufacturers. If tariffs make foreign steel more expensive, they might see an increase in demand.
But wouldn't that be offset by the higher prices consumers would have to pay for, goods made with that steel?
Yeah, that's the trade-off. And that's what makes it so hard to find that right balance. And one of the biggest criticisms of these tariffs is that they just end up leading to higher prices for everybody. And we can't forget about the potential job losses in industries that rely on those imported goods. It's a complicated equation.
Okay, so what about Canada and Mexico? How are they going to adapt if this trade war keeps heating up?
It won't be easy, especially for those industries that are being directly targeted by the tariffs. But,
Yeah.
they might start finding new markets for their products. And in the long run, this could actually push them to diversify their trade relationships. They
Yeah.
might become less reliant on the U.S. market.
So it could be a painful adjustment, but it could also force them to find new opportunities.
Exactly. It really highlights how interconnected the global economy is and how actions taken by one country can have ripple effects that, touch everyone.
It's a lot to wrap your head around. So what's the main takeaway for our listeners today? What should they keep in mind as they're trying to navigate this whole complex world of tariffs and trade wars?
Well, I think it's important to remember that trade is a powerful tool. It can drive economic growth and foster cooperation, but it's also a very delicate balance. These tariffs are presented as a way to protect American interests, but they could have unintended consequences that could end up impacting everyone, not just in the US, but globally. It's a reminder that in our interconnected world, we really need to think about the long-term implications of our actions. And we need to be striving for solutions that benefit everyone involved, not just, putting up walls and trying to protect our own little corner of the world.
Yeah, it's definitely more to this story than meets the eye. So thanks for taking the time to break it all down for us today.
Absolutely, it was my pleasure. These issues are complex, but they affect all of us. It's important to stay informed and engaged.
I couldn't agree more. So to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of trade and tariffs. And until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep exploring.
And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.